Now we turn to Daf Yudam and Beis. The ilav, the kusi, the chaver hava, lo machtem lemikameh. If not for the fact that the Yisrael who signed on this get below the kusi knows and recognizes this particular kusi as a chaver, he invited this kusi to sign the get because he knew that this kusi was medagdek b'mitzvahs. Lo machtem lemikameh, he would not allow the kusi to sign first unless he can certify that this kusi is neman, he's believed, he's medagdik b'mitzvahs. So the signature below that of the kusi is itself a testimony by the other aid to the kashrus of the kusi. So once we have a Yisrael who signed below the kusi, the signature of the kusi, that's proof positive that the kusi who signed is medagdik b'mitzvahs, and therefore he's neman, he's kosher to be made on a get. However, if there were two kusim signed on a get, we cannot be machshir the get. We have no proof that that kusi, or for that matter, both of these kusim are ksherim. But wait a second. If you're operating with the principle that you're machshir the kusi who signed above as a chaver, why? Because there's a Yisrael sign below him. Why shouldn't that operate even in other shtaros? So the Mishnah says in other shtaros, the shtar is possible. Hello. It must be that the reason that they weren't machshir and shar shtaros, they ate kusi, even though there's Yisrael who signed below him, is because I'm reading Rav Chashavak lemanda koshish minei. You're going to tell me that the fact that the Jew is signed below the kusi, that doesn't prove anything. That's not a testimony that validates that attests to the fact that this kusi is a chaver. Because you know what? It's very possible that when the Yisrael signed below, what was he doing? What was his intention? He wanted to leave some empty space on the get, which is called Niar Chalak Shavak, because he thought the other aid Yisrael is older than him. That's what, when I'm a Masechet Kedushin on a ksuba, so I make sure that to ask which of the two witnesses that are about to sign on the ksuba is older, I give him first rights to sign, and then the younger witness will sign below him. So the fact that the Yisrael is signed below might just mean that he left an empty space above his signature for another aid Yisrael who's older than him to sign. At
You
the
have to do that? You have to do that? You have to do that? Give the older one first?
We try to. I try to anyway.
Yeah.
But what happened in this particular scenario? Again, the aid Yisrael Kasha signed below, leaving an empty space, but unbeknown to him, the fellow who signed above him was a kusi. So there's no proof whatsoever from the fact that kusi is up on top. His signature is above that of the Yisrael, that the Yisrael is testifying on his behalf and verifying that this kusi is an Adam medagdik b'mitzvahs v'neman.
Right.
If that be the case, then again, Hachanami, that protocol is applicable not just to shar shtaros, but to Gittin as well. And maybe the fact that the kusi is signed above in the case of a get isha is Rav Chashavak Lamanda Koshish Minei. So we don't know that the Yisrael who signed below is testifying and adds his signature after he saw the kusi sign in front of him. So again, we're really hard pressed to come up with a distinction between Gittin Noshim and Shar Shtaros. The Gemara answers, Omer Papa is also Meres. We're going to derive from a Mishnah that validates the aid Kusi who signed on the get. That aid get ein chosmin zebelozer. That with regard to a get, we're not going to allow one signator to sign the get before the other signator even appears. They have to sign the get as a partnership, so to speak, as what we call a kat edus, in which each member of the kat has to know and be aware of the edus of the other edin. And therefore, if the kusi is signed on top and afterwards below his signature we see Yisrael sign, it must be that the Yisrael knew exactly who was signing together with him. And we see proof positive that the Yisrael attests to the reliability, the credibility of the kusi who signed above him, that he is a medagdik b'mitzvus v'neman. He's a chaver, and therefore we accept his testimony. Otherwise, Yisrael would not have agreed to sign or to allow the kusi to sign in his presence. But that's only in Gittin. But in Shar Shtaros, we have a principle of Edim Yecholim Lachtom Al Ashtar Zeh Shelo B'fnei Zeh. So let's say, for example, I'm a Malva and I lend you Kesef. And now I ask two Edim to sign on the Shtar Milva to testify that you're owing me money. Each aid could be tapped separately, and I just have to get a sum total of two signatures. It's like if you ever have a what's it called? What's the word when you sign a document to protest something against the government? Do you know
a petition?
What's it called?
A petition?
A petition. Excellent. I haven't heard that word in about 15 years. A petition. So I don't have to get all the people who signed on the petition to sign simultaneously, one next to the other in a group.
No.
I run around.
Right.
Let's say in the States, I don't know if it's the same in Canada, you need a certain number of signatures before you could be a valid candidate.
Right. Yeah.
So I run around, I'm a candidate or I'm working on behalf of a candidate and I get people signed on. Mm-hmm. And in all shtaros, other than Gittin Noshim, what do we need? We need signatures. How do we get those signatures? We run around and get them signed. But it doesn't mean that the Yisrael knew that the guy above him who signed was a kusi and he wasn't testifying. So the Gemara asks the following question. My timer, what's the underlying logic of Rav Papa? Why does Rav Papa insist that Eidei Aget ein chosmin elo zeh b'fnei zeh? Rav Ashi gzeira mishum kulchem. Okay, so this has to do with what's called kpeda de Baal. What's kpeda de Baal? Sometimes the Baal is makpid on a certain number of signatures. He wants X number of men to sign on his get. And therefore he turns to, let's say, 10 people, and he says, Kulchem kisvu get leishti. Okay, this is a sugya at the end of Masechet Gittin, on Daf Samach Vav Amud Beis. The Baal, by indicating with the word kulchem, has expressed his kpeda that he set up a t'nai in this get, and he wants all 10 people to sign on the get. Now, what's going to happen? We have to suspect that maybe the Baal will eventually give the get without all the 10 signatures on the get. And therefore, the get is really possible. But nobody's going to know that because, it looks like you've got 9 signatures on the get. Like, that's really a super duper get. It's got 9 signatures. But really, it's not kosher, it's possible.
Right.
So now we have a gzera mishum kulchem. What's the gzera mishum kulchem? The Baal did not say kulchem. However, what we need is that let's make sure that all the people signing on the get will gather together and sign in the presence of all of the Eidim that are going to be signed on the get. And therefore, it will cover our bases for a case of Kulchem. Because if we make sure that the Eidim will only sign on a get when all the Eidim are present, then in the case of Kulchem, they're going to look around and they're going to see, hey, wait a minute. What happened to Larry? Why isn't Larry signed on this get? Where is he? The Baal said Kulchem, and he's number 10. We need him for a minion. Right. So in order to guarantee that in the case of Kulchem, we won't make that terrible mistake of having less than Kulchem signed on the get, we made a Gzera requiring that all the Eidim who are signed on a get have to do so in the presence of all the Eidim. It could be 2 Eidim, it could be 10 Eidim. Rabbi Lazar says in a Mishnah, when the get ish is kosher, it's only if there's one signature of an Eid Kusi. We have it in our Mishnah. I don't need Rabbi Lezer to tell me this chiddush. The Mishnah says called get sheyeshel of Eid Kusi possible. And the Lashon Yachid, it says Eid Kusi, means there's only one Eid, that's a Kusi. Who's the other Eid? We need 2 witnesses signed on a get. It must be that the second Eid is the Yisrael. So what did Rabbi Lazar say? How would we have, perhaps, if not for Rabbi Lazar, misinterpreted the Mishnah? If I only had the Mishnah without Rabbi Lazar's comment, I would have entertained the idea that even if there are 2 witnesses signed and they're both kusim, nami kosher. What do you mean 2 eidim kusim are kosher? I mean, it says in the Mishnah, eid kusim, right? What does it say in the Mishnah? Eid kusim. That's only 1. How can you tell me it's 2? Haidiktani chad. So you'll ask me, why did the Mishnah use that singular grammatical form? Mishum de bishtaros afilu chad nami lo. The Mishnah wants to tell you a chiddush that the contrast between Gittin Noshim and Shar Shtaros is that in the case of Shar Shtaros, if there's only one Eid Kusi and the other Eid is Yisrael, it's kosher. But maybe in Gittin Noshim, in that case, we would say that even if 2 Eidim Kusim are signed on the get of be kosher, Mashmalon, Rabbi Loz wants to tell me that the Mishnah is only machshir Gittin Noshim if there's 1 Eid Kusi signed on the get. Can you defend that position? That if there are 2 Eidim Kusim signed on the get, it's possible. Tani, it says in the Mishnah, Maisav Evil if Neram Gamliel Kfar Usnoi get Isha. Wait, we didn't see this. Just 1 second. Did we skip that? No. Okay, just 1 second. Where is this Mishnah? Is it here on Daf Yudam and Beis? Just give me a second here. Okay, I'm going to have to find this Mishnah. I don't see it right now. It's just... And on this get ish, Yehoyu Eida of Eidei Kusim, V'hechshir Gamliel was machshir the get. So we see that even if 2 Kusim are signed on a get, it's kosher. Amrabaye Tni Eido. You have to change the word in the Mishnah from Eidim or Eidei to Eido. Eido meaning Lashon Yochid, and Rav Gamliel was machshir the get in Kfar Asunai because there was only 1 Eid Kusi signed on the get. Rava wants to offer an alternative answer to this question. Li Olam, let's take the girsa of Eidah, the Lashon Rabbin. And in truth, Rav Gamliel was machshir that get which was signed by two kusim. And why is that so? Ram Gamliel Miflik Polig. Ram Gamliel dissents and disagrees with the Tanakama in our Mishnah. He's maksher a get even if there are two Edom Kusim signed on it. So you'll ask a question, isn't this what we call a Maisa Soser, Maisa Listar? Right? We just finished saying that we can only be machshir again if there's one Eid Kusi. Now you're telling me a story that Rabbi Gamliel was machshir again with two Eidim Kusim? It's a Maisa Listar. But Chisuri Mechzer V'Achiktari. Here's how we have to read the Mishnah. Rabbi Gamliel, who disagrees with Tanakama, machshir gam b'shnayim. U'maisa nami eviu she'eviu lifnei Rabbi Gamliel kfar u'sanoi get isha v'hoyu einov Eidim Kusim v'hichshir Rabbi Gamliel was machshir. And now we're up to the Mishnah here on Daf Yudam and Beis, 2/3 down from the top. Kol ashtaros ha'olim barchosh al akum afal pisha chosmeim ovdei kochavim ksherim chutz migitei noshim v'shechrei vod. If we have a shtar, we're not talking about a get right now. We're talking about a shtar mama, and the shtar was created in a non-Jewish court. And the signatories on the shtar were goyim, the shtaros haksherim. And the exception to the rule is going to be gittin noshim, because there we need davar shebera, we need eidim ksherim. Okay, so we're saying that this shtar is valid. I would suggest it's valid not b'toras edus, but rather it's a raya, it's a proof. The very fact that I'm holding on to the shtar comes from the local, Ontario court of law, is recognized in Toronto. That itself is enough of a reason to rely on the shtar. But you can't do so in Gittin Noshim. In Gittin Noshim, we need the chasima of two Yisraelim that are, in order to be kosher as an aid, for Gittin or Kedushin, you need what's called B'toras. B'toras means you have to be included in Gittin and Kedushin, and a guy is clearly not. However, comes along Reb Shimon, and he says, Af Elu, even in Gittin Noshim Shechrei Vadim Ksher, even though the guy signed on the get. Below, Huzkuru Ela Bizman Shenasu Behedjat. In other words, the only time that we mentioned in the Beis Medrash to passel a get when the signatures are goyim is only if it was done behedjot. In other words, it wasn't done by the official Ontario Court of Law. It was done behedjot. So this shita of Rab Shimon is a pella. How can we accept this get? And the Gemara is going to explain the reasoning for Rab Shimon. The Gemara says the following: Kapasik v'tani, the Mishnah is unqualified, and it seems that all shtaros, whether it be, let's say, a sale, a bill of sale, or a document that's given to testify on a matana, on a gift, all shtaros that are done and are validated in a non-Jewish court are valid. Loshna mecher, loshna matana. Bishlema mecher, I understand if there was a kinyan through the shtar, mechiyoev zuze kamayu, hu dekana, shtar raya bi'almu. He understands that the judges in a non-Jewish court, once they saw the money that was passed on from the hands of the buyer to the hands of the seller, then they would use the shtar as a raya. They would write up a shtar to give the lokeach a proof, a bill of proof, that he paid up his money and he purchased the land, let's say, whatever it was. So the shtar now serves as a shtar raya. It was issued and validated by Archo Shel Akum, signed in front of those archos by two Edom Goyim, and to raya on the mecher. And we can rely on the non-Jewish courts to prove through this shtar that was signed by two Goyim that the mecher took place. And why did lo yov zuzi kamay lo v'imari nafshayu v'kasvinu le'lishtar? The archos shalakim would not allow for the writing and the validating of a document unless they witness the giving of the money as a kinyan to purchase the land, and the lokeach purchased the land. Because otherwise, they would be makalkel their nemonos. Ella matana, but in the case of matana, and there's a shtar matana that came and was issued by Archol Shalakim with the signature of two Goyim, is b'mai kakani. Where's the Kabbalah's kinyan? La b'ishtar, it can't be that this shtar, which is signed by two Goyim, is a shtar, can function and serve as a shtar kinyan. Ishtar chas b'bi'alm, it's not worth the paper it's written on. Omar Shmuel dina de malchusa dina. Shmuel says that the reason why the validity of this sale is recognized by the halacha is because whatever din, whatever judgment, not judgment, what do we want to call it, whatever ruling is handed down by a non-Jewish court, we have to recognize in a Jewish court. So the shtar matana is valid and binding according to the Malchus, according to the government of Ontario, and therefore we, in the Jewish dinim, have to recognize that. Ibai Seimer, the Gemara says, I can give you a different answer. Tani, we should learn in the Mishnah, chutz mi kig gitei noshim. No, it's not only are gitei noshim excluded from this rule of the Tana that we can rely on our chos, and that is because the gitei noshim generate a krisus, and we need two Yisraelim signed on the get. But even in other stars that are similar to Gitei Noshim, meaning they are shtare kinyan, like shtar matana, where the kinyan is effectuated through the shtar is not valid as a kinyan unless there are two signatures of Jewish people. And now we get to the crux of our issue for today, and that's Reb Shimon Omer Af Elu Ksherim. Reb Shimon was machshir a get isha that was validated in front of a non-Jewish court with two signatures of non-Jews. How can you possibly validate this get that was signed by Goyim who are not B'nai Krisus? So I'm going to tell you, Ira, without looking at the Gemara's answer, what the Gemara's answer is going to be.
Okay.
All right, let's see. I'm challenging myself here.
Okay.
Earlier in the Masechet, we had a machlokes about the case of a get that you find in the ashpa, in the rubbish pile.
Yeah.
And according to Rabbi Meir, such a get is possible. Why? Just one second. Wait, let me just get this straight. Rabbi Meir says 80 chasima karsi, Rabbi Loza says 80 masira karsi. I'm sorry. According to Rabbi Meir, the get is kosher. Why? Because Rabbi Meir doesn't require ksiva lishma, he only requires chasima lishma. But according to Rabbi Lazar, the get that you found in the rubbish is possible. It wasn't written for the sake of this Ruvain who's married to this Leah, and it's missing lishma. The ksiva has to be lishma. So it means that according to Rabbi Lazar, I don't care about any signatures in the get. Irrelevant. In fact, maybe even to Rabbanan it's not even required. So that now that you find a get that has two signatures of Goyim on it, according to Rabbi Lazar, who cares?
Right.
But now the question is, how do we validate that the ksiva was lishma? Rab Zera, Yorad, Rab Shimon, L'shitas Rabbi Lazar, the Amar Edi Mesira Karsi. Just one second, but what about the ksiva has to be lishma? One second. I'm missing a piece of the puzzle here. Just give me 1 minute. How are we doing on the clock? Oh, you can...
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and Yored Rabbi Shimon Shitasish Rabbi. You have any commentaries in your Gemara? What happened to the Ksiva Lishma? Edi Masir shall get him Karsim. Just 1 second. According to Rabbi Lazar, I always thought you need Ksiva Lishma, but maybe that was a mistake on my part. One second, I'm going to turn back to Rabbi Lazar, which I think is on Daf Gimel. Let's see if I'm right. Daf Gimel Amid Beis. Ein kosvim v'mechuber lekarka. Kosvim mechuber lekarka. Ksiva boy. What is ksiva boy? Ksiva boy means it has to be written lishma. Am I right? Yeah. I didn't make a mistake about that. Rabbi Lazar requires ksiva lishma. So what happens here? Again, I'm going to make a leap of faith here, and hopefully it'll become clarified, maybe not today, but another day, that we're talking about a get that was written by a Jewish sofer, and he wrote it lishma, and then the get found its way into Archo Shal Akum, and there were 2 goyim signed on the get, but the get itself was written lishma. I mean, that's a leap of faith.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just see why the Gemara rejects it. Amar Rabbi Abba, Modeh Rabbi Lazar Mezuyif Mitochash Apostle. Even though Rabbi Lazar doesn't require signatures on the get, but he's Modeh, as we saw earlier, that if 2 witnesses signed on the get, and in this case they're Eidim Goyim, then the get is possible. In other words, you could add another point over here that if we allow for Eidei Chasima to be Goyim, then who knows? Maybe tomorrow they'll allow Eidei Masira to be Goyim.
Right.
So the Gemara answers, Hachamay Askinon. Let's just see the answer here on Daf Yud Aleph. B'Shemos Muvhakim. Like it's signed by John Paul Jones, Christopher, some obvious non-Jewish name.
Right.
Then there are no Jews who have that name. It's a non-Jewish name. And therefore, they're not going to rely on these Eidim for Eidim Masira. And then the Gemara is going to go into a whole discussion about when is it considered a Shem Muvhak and when is it not considered a Shem Muvhak. I'm just not seeing right now that the get was written by a Jewish sofer, Lishma. Just look one more time here. You don't have any commentaries there on your Gemara?
I mean, I have.
Yeah, you don't have the art scroll, do you?
I do, but nothing that
Does he,
says
in any of the footnotes in the art scroll, does he mention something about the Ksiva, who wrote the get?
No, he's talking about idolaters. He's talking about
Maybe I missed it in the Mishnah itself. Let me just see Rabbi Shimon in the Mishnah. Ksherim. No, I don't see it in the Mishnah. Okay, there's something obvious here that I'm not sure what it is exactly, but this is where we'll stop for today. Okay, then, Ira?
Okay, yeah, it doesn't have anything here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me wish you a great week and Chag
All right,
Sameach.
shkoyach. Yeah, Chag
Okay.
Sameach, shkoyach.
So you have the same 2 days Yontif that we have, so to speak. Or we have the same 2 days Yontif that you have.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
That
right.
happened last year as well, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
best regards, Colton.